circle of rat back and I'm going and leaving tracks and morning. And I don't give a crap whether you streaming, you torrent this. You can try to contest, but you'll be needing an army. Beat them in Normandy, current rappers eat to the warning stone.
Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. Rob Van Dam is based. So Rob Van Dam went on Twitter and had an epic rant that he did towards John Oliver and John Oliver's statement that he made in 2019 about pro wrestling, specifically WWE. So I'm going to read the tweets because they are tweets, and there is obviously going to be some responses. So wrestling news journalists are not happy about this because he doesn't agree with them. This is about, to be specific before we get into it, it's about insurance, independent contractors, all that kind of stuff. So Rob is a different kind of beast, right? Rob is a very different guy. So he's obviously speaking for himself, but he's saying like, hey, you can extrapolate from what Rob Van Dam is saying to why there's no these things that the average Joe think comes with a work environment haven't been instituted in pro wrestling. But we'll get there. Rob Van Dam says, I love Vince McMahon. It's John Oliver that's an asshole. Now he said this in relation to the WWE icons, where Vince was talking about his relationship with Rob Van Dam and how much they have a very special relationship. They have a special bond between them. Vince's love of Rob Van Dam is absolutely great. In any event, a fan basically says, I wonder if Vince's feelings about Rob Van Dam are about each other. Do they feel the same way? And then Rob says, I love Vince McMahon. It's John Oliver that's an asshole. And then somebody responded, damn him for wanting wrestlers to have health care. Rob responds, you mean take away my independent contracting status, which gives me the freedom to buy insurance I need or want. Ever thought about that? Then somebody says, bro, John Oliver just wants you guys to have freaking health care. And Rob says, we all have it. We buy it because it's better to make more money and to take care of yourself than have an employer that pays you less to give you coverage. And then somebody sent him a video. I don't know what the video was on. It just said, then Rob says, this is why I fuck John Oliver. This is a one-sided story from an outsider. I obviously disagree, but what do I know? And then somebody says, then he continues, or if we don't have it, health insurance, because we choose to keep the money instead of spending it or having it spent for us. Woo. Rob. What a guy, man. What a guy. What a pal. So he continues. A lot of dead wrestlers, though. This is what a fan said. And then Rob said, by whose fault? Sorry to make you think. And then somebody responded, wrestlers have to choose between making a good salary or health insurance. And because they make so much, they will choose the big salary instead of the health plan. The WWE can't afford to pay their talent really well, like they are now, while also getting a health plan installed. Rob Van Dam responded, independent contractors negotiate everything in their contract. If insurance is important enough to them, they can demand that, just like hotel rooms and car rentals. It's those with no leverage that wish to have terms of someone in demand. So somebody says, wouldn't it be cool that you could work with who you want and for who you want? John Oliver is right, my friend. Rob Van Dam said, we don't have to sign contracts. When we do, the terms are all negotiable. If we don't want to be locked into a 3-year deal, we don't. Also, WWE keeps us too busy to ever work for someone else. Sounds like you and John Oliver are both ignorant on this, my friend. Woo, Rob is just, he's serving fans. He's serving the marks. So he continues. Somebody says, it's an illegal contract, mate. Rob knows for sure more than me, but the laws are laws. Rob responds, you can sign an agreement with a contractor to paint your house and stipulate he doesn't work on any other houses until he's finished with yours. Same thing. Nothing's wrong with it. So then somebody else responds, additionally, you're actually paying more in taxes as an independent contractor, my dude, and you don't even get any of the benefits of that status. Legally, as an independent contractor, he can't even stop, say, Roman Reigns from showing up on AEW tomorrow night. He's been lying. Rob Van Dam responded, wrong. Everything spent towards our job is a tax write-off. Again, what would I know? I've only worked both as an employee and as an independent contractor. So then somebody else responds, no offense, Rob, but that's not how that works. Is that what Vince has been telling you guys? If I work for Walmart, they provide an option. I can always go with a different option. That's how a private healthcare market works. You have a choice. Rob Van Dam says, you don't. You don't. The freedom of choices I have now. Do you? Keep punching the time clock and wearing that apron. If you want to pretend you have it best, feel free to do so. Don't fuck with my status, though. So, someone says, nah, John Oliver spoke facts. Rob said, well, perception is reality, which means it's real to you. Other outsiders and broken down hustlers looking for a payday, especially the ones who worked for WWE less than 10% of their careers. Somebody says, he was just inducted to the Hall of Fame and had a documentary released about him on Peacock. He is employed. The difference is, in RVD's current situation with WWE, he is actually treated like an independent contractor. The current WWE wrestlers have no such luxury. Rob responded, for the record, I am self-employed and have been since 1992. Then someone else responded, Vince fucked over so many people, ruined their lives, and in my opinion, is responsible for the death of multiple people. Rob responded, you've all been, quote, conditioned to feel that way. As a nonconformist, I consider things before I take them as fact. If I swallow 50 somas and wash it down with vodka this afternoon at home, on the road, even in an arena, don't any of you dare blame Vince or WWE. That's ridiculous. So then somebody else responds, I hate to tell you this, Rob, but unless you were free to work for other promotions during that time, you weren't really an independent contractor. Rob responds, I'm guessing you're not a lawyer and aren't familiar with the word terms. All right, enjoy the convo, guys. You're starting to dumb me down, and it's time for fans to start reading my words in angry voices. Rob, so somebody says, how was your insurance in ECW, Rob? Rob responded, good. It was through ECW, and it covered the jet ski accident situation. Thanks for asking. All right, so Rob is based. Rob is telling it like it is. Independent contractors have terms in their contract where they negotiate these different things. You're going to be compensated. I've said this 100 times on this channel, and other people seem not to get it. You can still be an independent contractor and still be contracted to one, I guess you want to call it employer, right? The way independent contractor status works is one corporation is in contract with another corporation, right? When we look at it from the perspective of it is a contracting status. If you are a government, right, and you want somebody to pick up the trash, right? Like if you have private contractors working the trash in the neighborhoods, that is a contracted independent contractor status. This company works for the government. The government cannot go and hire other independent contractors, and the independent contractors of the garbage people might not be able to do certain other things. It's all based on terms, right? Now, in wrestling, you need to have more than one person, obviously. So you're going to have 590 contractors, okay? So you may have 90 contractors, pairing them off into 2s and 3s and 5s and 6s and all that stuff, right? That's how these things work. You can have an independent contract, and the terms are negotiable. You know, can you go work somewhere else? WWE is probably going to say no. But in exchange for that, you're going to get paid more. But you're also going to be kept busy. That's all the media stuff that they do. All the media, the trainings, all that kind of stuff, right? They have a boatload of stuff to do. So, but you can have a contract in which you are contracted to one employer. Again, I say this all the time. There are people in the tech industry that are independent contractors who never work anywhere else. They simply work with one company. And it might be for a core reason for the company. Like sometimes you'll have an independent contractor and they don't want the guy to go jump from place to place to place to place because he might have sensitive information. You know, he might have something that the company needs for him to keep on the low. When it comes to WWE, it is their intellectual property, right? It is his face, his name, his look, everything. That's what they're paying you to not use us elsewhere. Because it's not like you have any sort of integral knowledge of WWE that you're going to take to New Japan or something like that. What you're going to take is your face, your name, and that stuff. and they can't monetize it if New Japan is using it. And they don't have sole control over it if New Japan is using it. So they're going to pay you to not do that, to leave sole control of the intellectual property of your face and your name, logos, all that stuff with them. That's what you're being paid for, right? Now you can have that contract. The contract doesn't mean that you can't go work somewhere else. It means that, you've signed away that right. Just like, in a court of law, you have the right to remain silent. You have the right to an attorney. You have the right to, you have Fifth Amendment rights. You can sign all of those rights away if you want, right? You can waive your right to trial. If you want to plead guilty to a crime, you can do that. You can just say, I'm guilty, give me my time, give me my sentence, whatever. And people do it all the time, plea bargains. Now, there's been people who've been saying, people who are involved in plea bargains, they are manipulated. And some people are. Some people are manipulated, some people are coerced into signing over their rights. If you are coerced, the contract is void. If you are manipulated in some way, the contract is void. Everybody knows this. So usually when you sign over a right of yours to someone else, there's a lawyer involved. So what Rob is saying is, yes, I have the right as an independent contractor to go work in Ring of Honor, New Japan, Impact, AEW, or whatever. But I'm signing that right away. And I'm being paid to sign that right away. And it's the same thing in a plea bargain if you get arrested for, shoplifting. And they may say, you have to, we'll give you probation if you just admit that you're guilty. You won't have to go through the whole trial situation. You don't have to go through that. Just say, I'm guilty, I did it. Here's my 6 months probation. We take it to the judge and it's over. And then people do it. It's because why go through the whole shenanigans about, witnesses and paying lawyer fees and then having to pay court fees when you get the fine or having to go to jail or whatever. Just make it easy. WWE makes it easy. We will pay you to sign over your rights. Boom. That's it. If you don't want to sign over your rights, they're not going to sign you to a contract. It has to be an agreed upon situation. All right. So that's the independent contractor thing. Now, when it comes to insurance, right? Typically you wouldn't, the whole thing with insurance is kind of sticky because wrestlers are hard to insure. And they're hard to insure because they naturally take a lot of damage to their bodies. And in doing so, insurance companies are not going to be thrilled about insuring 90 wrestlers, for one company. That may change the entire style of the business if they was able to do something like that. So independent contractor, a single wrestler, is going to have insurance. He has to have insurance to sign a WWE contract in the beginning anyway. You have to be responsible. So if you're a true quote unquote independent contractor in the sense of the way that other people think about independent contractors, you're going to have insurance anyway because you're going to be working in GCW one day and then in 3 weeks you're going to be working somewhere else and then 2 weeks later you're going to be working somewhere else. So you're not going to have insurance from GCW and then have to go and get insured for Ring of Honor because you did a match for them, and then you have to go and get insured by Impact because they did a match for them. That just doesn't make any sense. You can take your insurance and work in 6 different places. That's the benefit of having insurance that is not tied to your job. People have gotten too used to the idea of everything being provided by one employer. Paychecks, insurance, pensions, all that stuff, right? What a wrestler has to do, the way I look at it, to back up a little bit, the way I look at it, a lion in captivity versus a lion in the wild, right? A lion is a lion, right? But a lion in captivity behaves different than a lion in the wild. They're completely different animals at that point. A lion in the wild knows he gets hungry, he has to get off his ass and go eat. A lion in captivity waits for somebody to throw a steak over the wall and they get paid. It's the same thing. If you're an independent contractor in a WWE sense, you get a paycheck, a salary, right? So that means you're essentially a lion in captivity. But at some point, the doors are going to open up and you have to be a lion in the wild. And that means you have to go out and hunt. You have to call people and say, hey, I need to get booked on this show. Or people are going to call you and say, hey, we want to book you for this show or whatever. It's the same animal, different status. In wild, captivity, right? That's the best way to think of it. But you have to be a lion in both instances in order for it to make sense. Now, when it comes to insurance, it's the same thing. If you have insurance that is personal to you, you can take that insurance everywhere. So if you work in 6 different places in a month, you don't have to redo your whole insurance. Like people who I don't understand, when you see people, right, and they work at a place, they don't remember having to sign all the goddamn paperwork. Imagine having to sign all new paperwork every time you go somewhere. Or you hired somebody to paint your house and you have to sign them over for health insurance until the house is done. So that means they break their fucking ankle doing something else and they're not done painting the house. You have to pay their health insurance. That's crazy. That's insane. See, California, they went through this with that bill when they were trying to target Uber and Lyft, and they ended up snatching up musicians and artists and a bunch of other people who are independent contractors as well, because they were trying to tackle everybody should get health care, everybody should be, because they're trying to unionize people. That's the reason why they're trying to change the status. So if you're trying to worry, why do people care so much? It's because breaking down the independent contractor thing is one step closer to unionization. They're trying to get people to unionize, and you can't unionize independent contractors. So the concept is going to be change their status to employee. And then when they become employees and they get all the health insurance and blah, 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 then they're going to be saying, oh, you guys should just join the union. It's the same. The push never ends. And then once you've created a union, it's going to be, hey, you guys might as well just take over the company, But that's the insurance thing. It's better off for you to have your own personal insurance so you can go work wherever you want and not have to go through the insurance of one company. So if you get fired from WWE, you don't lose your insurance, because so many people lost insurance because they lost their job, right? You have to get on that temporary insurance. What's it called? COBRA in the United States. It's that temporary insurance that you're on until you can find another job. You still have to pay for it, but I think it's paid for by your employer, if I think correctly. I don't know how that works. I haven't had it in a while. But you get that interim insurance that you go from place to place. Now, when he talked about dead wrestlers, again, Rob was correct. It's about drugs. When we go back and we watch the wrestling, specifically a lot of the wrestlers who have died have been guys who were big in the 80s and 90s, right? Steroids, painkillers, alcohol, that stuff does. The rock and roll 80s, man. A lot of the guys who are dead now, killed themselves partying super hard in the 80s and 90s. Wrestlers have gotten smarter about that. The companies are also starting to change as far as, back then there was no drug enforcement because nobody cared and nobody knew, to be quite honest. Nobody knew the damage that, cocaine was going to do to their body, or heroin, or somas, or painkillers, or anything like that. There was just a complete ignorance of it. Steroids, too. People just didn't know. CTE is another one. People just didn't know. Over time, the industries have started to pick that stuff up, and now people understand, okay, maybe we shouldn't be hitting each other in the head with stuff, even though they're still doing it on the indies. Maybe we shouldn't be, maybe we should send guys to rehab if they have problems. But back in the day, they might send you home, or they may say you're not in any ability to perform, so you sit in the back and you get an appearance fee, or an appearance payoff, which is what happens today. If you show up to the show and you don't get used, you still get money. But there is, back then, those guys were doing all kind of stuff. They were partying until 2 a.m, getting drunk, getting high, showing up to the shows, working, then getting off, partying, drinking, drugs or whatever. And then you're surprised they're dead at 40. You're surprised they're dead at 50. When you look at how many wrestlers have died, look at the causes of death. A lot of them are heart attacks and different things that were induced by drugs and steroid use. But steroid use is not as bad as the painkillers and all that kind of stuff. Because there were guys like superstar Billy Graham who did steroids for years. He's not dead. He destroyed his liver, but he's not dead. There's plenty of guys like that. They're bloated and beat up because they punished their bodies to that degree. But then there's wrestlers who are, straight up wrestler guys who didn't have the extravagant bodies. They didn't party a lot, and they're just fine. They may have some lingering injuries due to just the nature of wrestling, falling down, getting punched in the head and stuff like that. But you know, the excess that the guys in the 80s and 90s are putting themselves through, a lot of these people don't have that today. They didn't have it before, and they're probably not going to have it today. But I think the big difference we'll probably see is when a lot of the guys who were debuting in 99, 2000, those guys start to retire. Then we'll start seeing it. But it's the same thing with pensions. A lot of people talk about pensions. Oh, wrestlers don't have pensions or anything like that. At that point, wrestlers can wrestle longer than football players can play football. Wrestlers can wrestle longer than a basketball player can play basketball. So when you have unions and all that kind of shit, even though they shouldn't have unions either, it's a difficult thing. A football player could be aged out of the league at 33, right? He could have fallen off between 25 and 33, and he's not even in the league anymore. So it makes sense for this guy who's probably going to live to be 60. Like, what is he going to do for the next 30 years? Now, some of those guys do go out and they get regular 9-to-5s. They played a little bit in the league. They go out and play. Some of them become wrestlers. Some of them go and work for ESPN or Fox News or CNBC Sports or whatever the hell. But they have to find something else to do. A pro wrestler can be in the business of pro wrestling almost their entire life, because there's always something for them to do. If they are a good talker, for instance, like Flair, like Austin Idol, those guys could still be in demand at 60 because and not to wrestle, but just to run a training facility, to coach a promo class, to be a mouthpiece for a younger guy on TV. Like we grew up watching old time wrestlers like Harley Race manage, Vader. If Harley Race was working in a factory, when you get too old to work in a factory, what do? You get sent home, and now what? My granddad went through that. That's why so many of those guys, even though they had pensions and jobs, they held on to their jobs until they was in their 70s and 80s because they didn't have anything else. So some of these guys who've been in the business their whole life, they can continue and fucking die in the business. They'll just move from one thing to another. They'll move from in-ring to outside the ring as a manager. Once they get too old to manage, they may become a booker somewhere, or they might start working in a creative producer. They might run their own school. They might even open up their own territory or something like that. There's always something for them to do. And when you create people with pensions, they become reliant on the job. They become, I gotta get up and go to work. To the same place over and over again. I don't have any options. And because you don't want to quit your job and then, ruin your pension. So people hold on to the job forever. Wrestling is easier to move people out of the way because you can always move them from in-ring to outside the ring. And Vince did that stuff all the time. I always talk about him stealth retiring people. A guy hits like 42. He's constantly injured. Vince puts him behind a desk. You know what? Go do commentary. He still has a job. He probably don't have to restructure his pay, but he still has a job. He still has something to do. He still has something to get up and get excited about. When you are an old guy that works construction and you can't work anymore because you hurt your back, there's nothing else for you to do. If you can't work, well, go sit at home on workman's comp, and then those guys, drink and smoke themselves to death because they don't have anything else to do with their life. You have to think about these things from more than one direction is what I'm talking about here. So Rob is based, man. Rob is based. And I know a lot of people are like, well, Rob is just, he's in the Hall of Fame now, and he's got this. So of course he's in the camp of WWE. It's like what a lot of people do. When you sit down and you think about it, only people who are unsuccessful are super concerned about unionization and stuff, except for Jesse Ventura, who was probably making a lot of money at the time he came up with that idea. But if we could go over, Jesse Ventura as the governor of Minnesota and how bad that turned out. So I should tell you how bad he is when it comes to politics and understanding economics and stuff like that. But that's why wrestling hasn't changed. Because guys do have rights. Absolutely they do. They sign them over though. No different than if, I have the right to free speech, but there are certain things I don't say because I'm in business with YouTube's terms of service. So there's certain things I'm not going to say. because YouTube can say, well, we're going to take you down. You are in violation of our terms of service. You know, WWE has a terms of service as well. When you have the right to dress however you want, to speak however you want, to do whatever you want. When you go work for WWE, they say, okay, this is how we want you to present yourself. You know, you're a representative of our company. We don't want you with holes in your shirt, you know, holes in your shoes, showing up in places disheveled, you know, or whatever. We don't want you running around looking like Mr. Robot with a WWE logo on your shirt, you know, because that looks bad upon us, right? And then they'll say, well, we'll pay for it. You know, you need to go buy a suit to do media. All right, go pay for it. They may reimburse you, or you may be able to write it off on your taxes or whatever the case may be, but you have to be presentable. You have to be lucid. So that means you can't be doing drugs and alcohol. You know, you have to be available. So maybe you can't go and do that Ring of Honor show or that GCW death match that you want to do. You know, so those types of things are signed off on, and your insurance, you should have it anyway so that you can take care of yourself because you are an adult, you know. So this stuff, Rob is based. He's fucking based. So I talk too much. Thank you guys for listening. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to this channel. 3 Count commentaries out, and I'll talk to you guys later.